Okay, welcome back everybody to another session of Edible Software. Today what we're going to be talking about is credit memos, how to create credit memos, and how to apply them. So all the different ways basically to modify a sales order after it's been marked shipped. The first thing I want to show you really quickly, for those of you who may be new to the software, to set up credit memos or to use credit memos, you must indicate a reason for that credit memo. So just to show you where you can set those up right now, it's under File and Code Maintenance, and under Inventory Credit Reasons. We have three major types of reasons for credits. The first one is a customer price adjustment. Essentially means that it is just a credit on top of the line price. So it's not affecting your inventory in any way. It's simply an amount off the line price. The do not return reason basically is a situation for any reason whatsoever that you're crediting the customer and you cannot resell this inventory. This inventory is no good, so we have to dump it or mark it as damaged, whatever the case may be. So you can assign that. You can assign the debit account for the full item cost to one of your other cost of goods sold accounts. Again, damage and spoilage, anything like that. The last option, or one of the most popular options, of course, is the returned inventory. So return to inventory allows you to return the inventory. We don't have to specify a debit account for the cost because we're just using our normal inventory account. And then you'll see most of these options hit a default credit or debit account for the price. That is pretty much your sales return. If it says default, you can specify that to something else if you need. You can do any number of credit reasons under the same credit reason type. You don't just have to have one. So if you do want to get granular, you do have the ability to add as many credit reasons as you want. And of course, when you run that transaction report by reason code, you can really see why was something credited to that customer. So there's definitely a benefit in having multiple reason codes. The other reason codes that we'll be hitting on today are non-inventory credit reasons. So of course, this is a credit on top of the invoice total, has nothing to do with your inventory. So that might go to a certain expense account, bad debt, or whatever the case may be. And then, of course, the last one is a sundry credit reason for any sundry items that you might have had, and that doesn't have a GL account assigned to it because it's simply offsetting whatever account the sundry item was tied to. So those are the major credit reason codes that you can set up beforehand. Just wanted to get that out of the way as a prerequisite. So let's go ahead and get into how to adjust those sales orders. So of course, as you know, a sales order has three different statuses: open, delivered, or billed. When we talk about credit memos, the order must be in a billed status. If we are going to use any of these options, anything that says credit memo, we are talking about billed invoices. We do have an adjust delivered invoice for any order that is marked shipped or just marked as delivered. That is because once an order is marked shipped, you can still change a couple of different things in the sales order screen itself, but you won't be able to change anything as far as the quantity if you need to take away quantity. So that is why we have the adjust delivered invoice. So I'm going to go through that really quickly just to show you. So when we are doing an adjust delivered invoice, and again, that was under sales, credit memo, adjust delivered invoice, return authorization processing. Have fun saying that. We'll hit select invoice, and it will show you all of your sales orders that are just marked as delivered. So no open or billed invoices will show in here. We can go ahead and select the sales order that we want. And that will show you all of your line items. And this is very similar to the credit memo screens we're going to see in just a sec. You can enter in some notes for this adjust delivered invoice if you want to. Otherwise, what you do is select the line item that you need to adjust, put in the credit quantity, and it is an understood negative, so you do not have to put in a negative sign. All you do is just put in the amount, tap enter, and when you tap enter, it's going to ask you what is the reason this is being returned, because we need to know, is this coming back to my inventory? Do I need to update my cost of goods sold? Anything like that. So what we're going to do is say, okay, this is a return product. Maybe I didn't actually sell it. Maybe I actually left this off of the shipment. So I'm going to go ahead and return that product to inventory so I can resell it and click OK. And there's no reason to update the date or anything like that because we're adjusting a delivered invoice. It is based purely on the date of the invoice itself. So your inventory will be back in inventory if you are returning as of the same delivery date. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save. You will get a message saying that this cannot be voided or modified after the fact. So we'll click OK. And this automatically applies. Once you save and click OK to that message, this automatically applies to that sales order. So you can print out this adjustment if need be. And forgive me, my printer drivers are a little off, so I'm going to be cut off on the right side. But just to give you an idea of what this printout looks like, I'll go ahead and preview that. So that just shows me the original shipped quantity, and it shows me the negative amount. So this is actually a printout of the invoice itself. Now I can print that from here, or I can go back to that sales order itself and take a look at it. So I'll go ahead and open up the sales order screen really quickly. I'm going to pull up that sales order. Maximize. And I just hit F7 to pull up my invoice number since I know it offhand. I'll go ahead and type in that invoice number, and it'll indicate this is a shipped order. And when I come into item detail, I can see that extra line has been put in for the negative. So when you do an adjust delivered invoice, it's actually going to modify the sales order screen itself by entering in that line. Other things you can do for a shipped invoice, just so you know, is you can add items. So if in the case that this was not a negative amount, I actually shipped more than the original order quantity, I can simply add that line again and put in the amount that I need to add. So I could do that on a shipped invoice. The other thing I can do in here is modify the unit price. So I may not touch so much when we get into the actual credit memos. I may not touch so much on the price adjustment, credit if all I need to do is update the unit price. Now, of course, if you actually want that document, you want that credit memo to be seen, even though it's a price adjustment, then absolutely, we're going to create a credit memo. But if you needed to go ahead and just update the unit price, you could do that for a delivered invoice. But you're asking, well, what about a billed invoice? If it's a billed invoice, don't I only have the ability to create a credit memo? Yes and no. If there is a situation where it is just a price adjustment, you don't necessarily need the document, and you just want to update the unit price for that item, I can go ahead and pull up a billed invoice, and I can go ahead and press this button, reverse to delivered invoice. All this does is it takes it off of my AR so that I have the ability to edit that certain information. I can go ahead and update the unit price now. Click Save. And I will have to reship and bill. So I will have to go ahead and rebill that invoice for it to hit my AR again. And of course, you can do that under receivables and bill orders, or you can go back to the shipping screen and reship and bill from there. But I will handle that at a later time. So just to let you know, there are certain things you can do before getting into the credit memo. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the actual credits. So this is when we know We have to adjust inventory on a billed invoice. We have to make sure that we have that document so it's sitting on the customer's ledger, all of that good stuff. So there's a couple of different options that we have, as you can see. The inventory applied credit memo is if you know this is going to be a credit, an approved credit. So when you do the inventory applied credit memo, you know I'm returning this inventory or I am making this credit, it's approved, it's going to happen. The only reason I put a little bit more emphasis on that is because after you apply a credit memo, there's no turning back. You will have to go ahead, if something was applied incorrectly, you will have to call us to have it reversed. So this, again, is a very simple option, but we want to make sure that everything is ready to go. So once I open the inventory applied credit memo screen, I can do one of two things. If I know my invoice, then all I have to do is press F7 and I can enter in that invoice number like I did before. If I don't know my invoice number, but I know my customer, I can go ahead and select customer, select my customer, select my invoice, and here I can see that invoice. Now, as you can see, there's a little bit more information happening here up at the top. It's very, very similar to that adjust delivered invoice screen, but we have some other options, such as this order went out last week, but I may want to backdate this credit if need be. Maybe this credit was done earlier in the week and I wanted to go ahead and backdate it. I do have the ability to do that, so do pay attention to that credit date. I can insert a driver, assign a driver to this credit memo if they're going to go ahead and pick this up. I can go ahead and enter in my notes. I can enter in an alternate credit memo number if I want to. So a lot of the same information, just a couple of different options. If this was a situation where we're completely undoing the invoice, they said, you know what, I want to cancel the order, even though it's already been shipped. I'm going to go ahead and just cancel this completely. We do have a credit all button, which will simply copy the ship quantity to the credit quantity. We'll choose whatever reason, hopefully it's a return to inventory reason, so that we can get that inventory back in as of this credit date. So again, that is what this affects. It doesn't just affect when this credit applies to your general ledger, but it also affects when the inventory, if you were returning inventory, is available in the system again. So that's the credit all option. However, we'll just work with one item at a time. So I'm going to work with this. Let's go ahead and work with the cilantro. I sold 10 cases. They said 2 were bad and we had to dump it. So I just come in here, select that cilantro item, enter 2, enter. Since they're dumping it, I'm not returning it to inventory, so I'm going to go ahead and choose that do not return to inventory reason code. And then based on your settings, you might have the ability to change the credit price. So if it's going to default with whatever the ship price was, however, if you wanted to say, okay, we're going to give you a credit, but maybe not a full credit, or maybe they asked for a little bit more, that is completely possible depending on your settings, as long as the full credit price does not exceed the total line price. So as long as this extended price right here does not exceed the price of the original line, I'm good to go. I can change that to 8 if I wanted to. And I do get a message telling me, hey, that's greater, so just check on that. Okay. And I can work on any other lines that I might have credits for, but if everything else was good, I can see down here my current credit amount is $16. If there was a tax amount assigned to that, it would calculate that tax amount as well. And over here, this last credit total, if there were credits already applied to this invoice, I would actually see those right here. And of course, there would be a difference between the invoice total and the invoice balance. But if I had credits already applied, I could actually double click here and look at those credits. Now, right now I won't be able to because there's nothing to see, but I can show you that in just a little bit. But anyway, if I'm set, I know this is done, I'm going to go ahead and click Save. Well, and actually, let me go ahead and backdate this. Let's say this happened on Monday. I'm going to click Save. Again, we'll get that message saying we cannot void or edit this after it's been done. So we'll make sure we're completely okay, and if we are, we'll click OK. And we can print the credit memo from here. And again, it's going to look exactly like your invoice. The only difference is it's not a reprint of the invoice like the adjust delivered invoice. It's just going to show the line item and the credit quantity. One question we had before was, does the credit memo show the invoice this was created off of? Yes. If you are doing an open or applied credit memo or return authorization by selecting invoice, it will show the invoice number this credit was created for. So I'm going to go ahead and skip the preview on this, and we'll go ahead and close. And if I go back into that sales order, F7, it was invoice number 3, and click OK. I come down here, I'm not going to see anything in here. Again, it doesn't modify the sales order because it's already been sent out, but I can see my invoice balance is now less than my total. So that is a good indication that I have a credit balance applied to it. Another good thing to know since we're in here is if a credit balance or if a payment has been applied to a sales order. So if for any reason this total is different than the invoice balance, I will not be able to press that reverse to delivered button. So just bear in mind, if you needed to change the unit price on something, but you have already partially paid it off or credited it, you will not be able to do that. You would then have to create a price adjustment credit memo. All right. The next option is the inventory open credit memo. The only difference, and you'll see when I open this up, it's the same exact screen essentially. The only difference between the open and applied credit memo is that it does not automatically apply. So I could be creating a credit memo based off of this invoice, but I could choose to apply the credit balance to another invoice later on down the road. So again, I'm going to go ahead and select customer. Let's go ahead and choose new Escape. Click select invoice. And you see here, this is actually a good thing. I have a credit already applied, or this was an invoice created by, this is a debit memo that was created. So I won't actually be able to apply a credit here because one, it's not an inventory item, and I have zero balance. So actually, I'm going to cancel that. And I'm going to select customer again, and let's go ahead and just go with Carnival Fruit Company. Select this invoice. So here I have Bright Summer Bouquet and Celery Diced. So again, same options up top. I can change my credit date. I can change my driver if need be. I can alter that credit memo number, enter in notes, but it is the same exact situation. If I go ahead and put in one, let's go ahead and do a price adjustment on this one. And basically, you can credit them a full bouquet if you wanted to, or again, we can just say, all right, I'll take $2 off of one of the bouquets. So here is my credit. So nice and simple, but pretty much the same exact thing. But again, if I go into the sales order, I will see that this invoice total and this invoice balance are still the same. It has not applied to this sales order. So now I have this $2 credit sitting on the customer's ledger. So those are the major differences between those two. The inventory open credit memo without invoice, is not used as much, but if there is a situation where somebody returns inventory and they say, I don't remember which sales order I bought this on, I don't remember which invoice this was on, but I know I bought it from you and I would like a credit. If you agree, then you can go ahead and create a credit memo simply based off of an item returned. So all I do is click New. I select the customer that has returned this item. So let's go ahead and go with Carnival Fruit Company. I'll click Add Item, select item. Oh, and let me back up really quick. A lot of the same information, like we said. So you can link a salesperson, link a driver, anything like that. The salesperson was not on the other one because we already have a salesperson linked to the invoice, so we didn't need to choose that before. Now, if you wanted to, you could do that if they give you that information. And then you can specify this as a pickup or a delivered credit memo. So if they're delivering it back to you or if you're going to pick it up, you can specify that as well. But after I click Add Item, I'm going to click Select Item, and I'm going to choose that item that they brought back. So let's go ahead and say cilantro. They returned one case. And depending on your settings, your cost may pre-populate, but sometimes, more often than not, it won't. So just bear in mind, it will show you the last cost as a reference, but unless you have something in here, a cost will not automatically show up. So you want to make sure that there is something in there, so we're not losing on this item. And then, of course, you can specify a lot expiration date if you want to. Otherwise, I'm going to click OK. I'm going to go ahead and put in my price. So they said they bought this for $10 a case. And I'm going to go ahead and choose my reason. So I'm returning the inventory. I'll click Save. And it's telling me the cost of the inventory is greater or equal to the credit price. That's perfectly fine. Again, it's just saying, is this okay? I'm going to click OK. Click OK. And now, again, it's an open credit memo, hasn't been applied to anything because we didn't create it off of anything. So we're going to go ahead and leave this $10 credit on their ledger until we know what we want to apply it to. But now this cilantro, this case, has been created in my system. So now I have a case of cilantro that I can sell. I'll go ahead and close that. The other credit memo option is a non-inventory open credit memo that we briefly looked at in code maintenance. So of course, the non-inventory open credit memo, again, is just a total credit off of the invoice balance. Has nothing to do with your inventory. So as you can see, it looks very, very similar to the open credit memo without invoice screen. The only difference is that we're not selecting any line items. So I just click New, choose the customer that is going to be receiving this credit. Make sure the credit date is correct. Always make sure the credit date is correct. Enter in the alternate credit memo number if I need, any notes. I can click Add Line, and then I can go ahead and just put in a price. So we don't need to worry about credit quantity, obviously. This is non-inventory, so it comes in as a -1 automatically. So I just go ahead and put in the price that I need. So they wanted a $25 credit. I'm working with small numbers today. And then I have two different credit reasons that I created. I created a courtesy credit, or sometimes, not necessarily recommended, but some people can do, you can do this, is completely possible, to use this as a discount. So if you don't use our normal discount per item module, you can do just a bulk discount and tie that to whatever account you need to. So let's say I'm gonna set this up as a $25 discount on top of that invoice. So I go ahead and click OK, click Save, and click OK right there. And again, it is a credit memo that's been created It is on my customer's ledger. I can print that credit memo out. It looks exactly the same as all of the others. The only difference, of course, is that there isn't an actual inventory item to reference. But that's basically how it looks. And again, I apologize about my preview not working today. That's purely my computer. All right. The last credit memo option. So all of the ones that we've talked about so far were the older credit memo options that were built into the system. And as I've mentioned before, they're a little bit more restrictive. As soon as you have created that credit, whether you've applied it or not, the credit memo is created and it cannot be voided and it cannot be edited. So there are ways to get rid of those credits if they were created in error, but it's a little bit more, it's just a separate process. So we also have a return authorization processing screen. What this allows you to do, and I'm a personal big fan of it, it allows you to create credit memos referencing your sales orders in batches. Or I apologize. It allows you to create credit memos in steps. So basically, I don't have to save it. I don't have to apply it yet at any given point. I can just keep this as an open draft until I am ready to actually save and apply this credit memo. So to go through the steps here, very similar, but obviously a totally different screen. We'll click New at the top and select our invoice that we want to work on. So again, this is just like a credit memo. It's working off of billed invoices only. So I'm going to work off of the Waterfront Market. And I've got two items here, my cilantro and my Eddie. So I'm going to go ahead and start setting up my return authorization. Before I do that really quickly, it does give you a pickup date. What we didn't see here is since my invoice that pops up, if the pickup date, which defaults to today's date, is more than 24 hours past the original invoice date. So all you have to do is click OK, and you can back up that pickup date if needed. So if, again, this is just like a normal credit memo that was done beforehand, you can back up that pickup date. And again, you can link this to a driver. The other good thing about the RAs is that you can treat these as orders. If these are indeed pickup orders that you need to go get, then you can treat these as regular sales orders and have them appear in the shipping screen. Of course, there's no marking them shipped and billed or anything like that. It simply allows the shipping clerk to see, okay, I've got so many shipments and I've got to pick up for item that's being returned. So very nice feature there. A lot of the same information over here that you can update, the alternate credit memo number. If you want to assign multiple credits to a batch, you can assign a credit memo batch number. Route and sequence, if this is a pickup, you can go ahead and update the route and sequence, and you can go ahead and click Notes. And then if you are creating this, if you're creating this credit memo, but it's not purely based off of the invoice you selected, I can go ahead and click Add Line, and it will add another line for me if need be. But I'm going to go ahead and forget that, and I'll just work off of the first one. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my RA quantity, which is essentially my drafted credit quantity. So I'm going to go ahead and say they bought a couple, 10 cases of this Eddie smoked turkey. I'm going to go ahead and say they returned 5. So I'm going to return this product. It's perfectly good to sell. So again, follow the same exact steps after you enter in that quantity. And again, you can update the price if need be. So it was sold at $2, but I can update the price. And if this is a catch weight item, if this is a variable weight item, I can update the poundage as well. All right. I can even put in some comments, individual line comments for the RA if needed. So I can go ahead and click that. and enter in any notes that I might have. But essentially, and I can see my lot information down here as well. So if I am returning inventory, I can choose which lot that I am returning to. That's the same thing for credit memos, and I apologize we didn't get an example like that. But if you are doing a credit memo and returning inventory that you maybe pulled from multiple lots, you will be forced to choose which lot you are returning to. So just bear that in mind. I'm going to go ahead and say this is the only item that I need a credit on. So again, I can go ahead and post, or I can go ahead and post this, or I can save it. And when I save it, it's just a draft. There's no credit quantity, nothing has happened to my inventory, it's simply there for when I need it. So if I can, and I can print this, I can send it off to the customer, they can approve it, it looks exactly like our normal credit memo printout. And again, it does reference the invoice number that it was created for. But once I have approval from the customer, I can come back into the screen. I can select the RA that I've been working on, so I know it was this one. And I can go ahead and click edit and keep going to the approval process. So now I know this credit's been approved. So I have an option. I can either manually enter in the credit quantity that they approved. So if it was different, I can do that. Or I can copy all my RA quantities to credit quantities. So the second button right here will just copy whatever is over here over to the credit side. So now this is basically my full credit amount. And the credit all option, just so you know, that's the same thing as the credit all button in the normal credit memo screen. So it'll simply take everything from the ship quantity and populate it into the RA quantity. All right, so I am good to go. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that everything looks okay. And I'm going to go ahead and save. Save, yes. Oh, I apologize. I missed something there. Let me go ahead and edit. Save. Apparently I'm missing something. I apologize, everybody. So let me go ahead and work with the normal item right now, just so that we can get through this, and I will check on the weight, and I will include that in the follow-up email on how to enter in the credit weight. So let me go ahead and just edit this, and I'm going to go ahead and remove this credit quantity. And I'm just going to work with the cilantro. And again, I do apologize about that. So we'll work with that. I can copy all over. So now we have our credit quantity here. So I'm going to go ahead and I can save, or I can post my inventory without saving my credit memo. So if I post inventory and I'm returning inventory, the good thing about this is I know my inventory is coming back and it's good to sell, and I want it available as of this pickup or credit date. So I'm going to go ahead and post inventory. And anytime I make a change, or anytime that I post or save or reverse, anything like that, it's going to date and timestamp and record the user that did so. So I always have that information available. So again, if I post inventory, it's returned my inventory to the system so I can use it. However, it does not allow me, it has not created the credit memo yet. So I'm still maybe working on the price, maybe I'm still arguing about certain information like that. But once everything is completely approved, I can just click edit and post credit.
Off the ballot this morning.
Okay, so once I post my credit, then It's all good. My credit memo exists. It is an open credit memo, so this is not automatically applied. So it is sitting on the customer ledger to be applied later on. Now, the other good thing about the return authorization processing, let's say we went through all of this. We went through all of these steps to create this credit memo, and the customer comes back and says, hey, you know what, forget it. Let's just go ahead and move on. We don't need this credit. Well, if it has not been applied yet, if this credit memo is still sitting out there open with a full balance, then I can always come back and reverse the credit. So I don't have to create a sundry invoice or clear the credit through any special process. I can just come in, select that credit memo, click reverse credit, and it's like it never happened. The other option that I did have that I apologize I didn't click on was the hold button. The hold button basically allows you to put this RA or even the credit memo on hold until you actually want to use it. So even if you posted the credit, if it was on hold, no one could use it until you've taken it off hold. So again, another nice feature in this screen. Right. So that's the return authorization processing. It looked like there were a lot of steps involved. I know I was more just doing that to go through all of the individual steps that might have happened. But of course, you can go in and create a credit fairly quickly in the credit memo or in this return authorization processing screen. A really quick example of the return authorization. Let's just go ahead and select my customer, select my invoice, and create from there. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my Carnival Fruit Company. It shows any existing credits down here as well, just like in my normal credit screen. So I'm going to go ahead and credit back 2 of the bouquets. I'm going to go ahead and just say it was a price adjustment, and I want $3 off of the 2 bouquets, so it's a total of 6. So I'm going to go ahead and post credit. I don't have to go through each individual step. If I know this is going to be happening, I can just go straight to post credit as long as I have a credit quantity. So if I tried to do that right here, I wouldn't be able to. I'll credit all really quickly. I here have my full credit amount, post credit, and I'm good to go to apply as needed. So, applying credit memos. Obviously, the applied credit memo option automatically applies. Nothing else needs to be done. But for all of those open credit memos, we have 2 primary options on how to apply those credits. The first one is the apply credit screen. Now, the apply credit screen is very simple to use, very user-friendly. The only difference, or the only issue, we'll put that in quotes, is that if you apply a credit through this screen, it follows the same rules as the automatically applied credit. Once it's applied, it's applied. And if there is any issue or if it was applied to an invoice in error, then we would have to have a developer reverse that credit. So again, you can use this screen. Again, it's very simple, but just make sure you know exactly what is happening. To use it, it's very, very quick. If you have multiple credits listed up here, all you do is select the credit memo that you want, click apply on the right side, select whatever invoice or invoices you are applying the credit memo to. So if you're applying the full credit, just double click and it will apply the full credit. If you wanted to distribute this amongst other invoices, you can go ahead and just manually type in. Otherwise, make sure the apply date is correct up here and click save. All right. So again, that credit has now been applied to that invoice. My balance is now $10 less. But if that was done in error, then I would have to have a developer remove that. So the other option to apply credits that gives you a little bit more freedom is the Payment Refund Center. So the same area under Receivables Payment Refund Center where you apply payments, you can also apply credit memos. I'll wait that to open really quickly. And my connection's running a bit slower, guys, so I apologize about that. I have my batch created, so it follows the same rules as processing payments. We will have to have a batch to work in. I come to my Payment Refund Center button to the processing screen under Patch Details. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and find the customer or find the invoice that I want to apply the credit to. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the Carnival Fruit Company. And I have two credit memos listed and my one invoice listed. So of course, you can apply a credit memo with a payment, or you can apply a credit memo by itself. It's pretty much the same exact process. When I click New Payment, if I'm going to apply a payment along with the credit memo, then I would go ahead and enter in the payment just like I normally would. I would go ahead and distribute. And after I've done that, I just want to make sure that these two buttons are checked. This Apply Credit Memo and Open Receipts, and Apply Credit Memo and Open Receipts first. What this will do is once you have entered in the payment information, you select to apply, and when you click Apply to Selected, it's going to apply those credit memos first, then apply the payment balance to the invoice. Now, the same thing is if you wanted to just apply a credit memo without a payment, you just leave the dollar amount at zero. So there's no, once you click New Payment, all you do is select the invoice, select whatever credit memos, click Apply to Selected, and when I click Save, now this is telling me there's still an outstanding balance. It's just because these credit memos don't fully wipe out the invoice. That's perfectly okay. But those credit memos have now been applied to that invoice. And it actually creates a record for me to look at so I can see. I can go in and I can say, okay, I've got this record here, it's at zero, but what exactly is going on there? I can hit Payment Refund Details. And I can see, oh, okay, I applied 2 credit memos to this invoice. Now, we talked about, well, what's the benefit to that? Well, if those credit memos were applied in error, just like we said, I can go ahead and select that record and reverse it. So now I don't have to call on my developer, I don't have to do anything special to unapply. I just click reverse, and when I go back in here, I can see those credit memos are back on my customer's ledger at their full amounts. My invoice is back to its previous balance, so it's like nothing happened. So that is the benefit of applying credits through the Payment Refund Center screen. So those are the main ways that we can apply credit memos. The last thing I wanted to talk about today was, what if I did save one of those credit memos in error? What if I saved a credit memo not through return authorization processing, but through one of the normal screens, and I needed to get rid of it? Well, again, as long as it's an open credit memo, we can do that. What we needed to do in the past was we needed to create a sundry invoice for the credit amount and for the same customer and apply it that way. Now we have a utility, if you haven't seen this before, under Database Utilities, Clear Credits. It essentially does the same exact thing. It will create a sundry invoice or a debit memo on the back end, and it will apply to that credit memo that you selected, and it will basically clear it off. A couple of notes about this screen: it is very user-friendly. However, just be aware of this date. So you have 2 options, and this essentially is what the screen was created for. You have the ability to say, okay, I want to see all of my really old credit memos that are sitting on my customers' ledgers. I just want to get rid of them. They're not going to be applied. They're not taking them. I just want to get rid of them. So I can go ahead and clear credits up to a certain date and just be done with it. Or obviously, the way that we're going, we can go ahead and select individual credit memos to apply to. So leave everything else alone. I just want to clear this one individual bad credit. The one note I wanted to talk about was this list of credits is also based on this date. So be aware that if you are going to choose that list of credits, make sure that the date is updated so that we can see everything. Because if I click on this now, I'm going to see nothing to select, as because I haven't created anything or I don't have anything open as of 2017. So I'm going to go ahead and update that to 2018. Now I have my credits that I can go ahead and get rid of. So let's see, this Jerry Seafood, they're never going to take it, or we decided to cancel it. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. So I selected that. You can select multiple by holding down Control. So you can still update multiple credit memos as needed. And it will just create the individual debit memos for those credit amounts. So I've got my sales order date here. So this is the date that I want to go ahead and clear this credit as of, essentially. Same thing with the apply date. It's going to go ahead and apply that credit memo as of that date. So I'm going to go ahead and just leave this as 1919. I'm going to apply everything today. And the other thing that you're going to do is select a sundry item that these debit memos are created with. So the sundry item that we have and what we always recommend is a credit memo fix. More often than not, this is going to be pointed to your sales return, since most of your credit memos are pointed to your sales return account. Other than if there are any others that are pointed to maybe a different account, you can go ahead and create multiple sundry items for those credit fixes. But otherwise, I've got one set for my sales return account, so this is what I'm going to use to offset those credits. I can put in notes if I wanted to go ahead and keep track of why did I clear these credits. But afterwards, if everything else is good, I'm going to click Update. It's just telling me what's happening, what's going to be done. If I'm unsure, click No. But I am sure, I'm going to click Yes. And my update's been done successfully. So if I go in to that customer master file, and I want to see one of those credits that I took care of. So the Jerry Seafood, for example. Again, apologies on my connection. Jerry Seafood Company. I'm going to go ahead and come into the ledger. And I'm going to back this up to the 1st, just so I can get everything. It would help if that was the right date. And it would help if I went ahead a little bit more as well. Let me choose another one. I apologize, guys. Let me go ahead and choose the Carnival Fruit Company. There we go. Here, I have that Carnival Fruit Company. I apologize. That was not the other one that I chose. I must have missed where I applied that credit. I apologize, everybody. Number 2, always check your customers. There we go. So I had that credit memo here for the $25. It has a 0 balance, and I can see I've created this debit memo via this clear credit routine. So of course, if I double click on that debit memo, I can see that it was applied to that credit memo number 14. All right. Apologies about the wait on the end, guys. There was me forgetting how to press buttons in my own system. But anyway, that is essentially how to create credit memos, all of the different ways that you can do it, all the different ways that you can apply credit memos, and how to remove credit memos that are still open. Again, if you have any questions, please go ahead and enter those into the chat window or email those to us. But at this point, that is basically the end of this training, and we will get this recording out to you by today or tomorrow. Thank you guys thank you for everybody who came, and we will go ahead and talk to you later. All right, bye.